my gift to you to begin with is a gift from my dad. I'm a member of Red Pheasant Reserve. We're Cree, and I have a song. But I don't have my drum or my rattle. I have you to be my instrument. So, listen to the person beside you. Not too loud. If you go too loud, because I'm going to sing with my eyes closed, I'll go like this, which means go softer, okay? And if there's an arrhythmia, go like this. So try to get back on track. This is perfect. Lovely. A class. Thank you. Probably need that water. Let's keep that up right there. So slow it down a bit. Slow down, not low down. Slow down. So I'm closing my eyes. I may go like this. And it may actually be coordinated enough to, you should follow me. Otherwise, ignore me. Okay, if that made any sense. Yeah, hi, yeah, yeah, hi, yeah, hi, yeah, yeah, hi, yeah, hi, yeah, hey, hi, yeah, hey, hi, yeah, yeah, hi, yeah, yeah, hi, way higher, yeah, higher, way higher, way higher. Matio pisque, tapwe kinaheskeni chilus, tapwe kichipehin papianae. Way higher, way higher, yeah, higher, yeah, higher, way higher, yeah, higher, way higher, way higher. This song is a love song. And when I said Nietzsche Moose, sweetheart, sweetheart. So you can take that home if you want, Nietzsche Moose. And I think it's an appropriate song. If you think about what we've been talking about, the passion that people have brought to the presentation, and the passion that I think has been lit in people that are maybe new. It's all about love. It's all about love for people and the community. There you go. That's our beginning. I want you to remember that when I have this 20-odd slide presentation. Right? Love, 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 love. Again, I don't have my language, but I asked my dad for a prayer, for a greeting, for a song. And he gave it to me. So I share that with you. And that's what I was using. My grandmother called me Water Lily. And I'm of the Eagle people of the Eagle Hills. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Okay, so I was asked to talk about this research project. So this PowerPoint is about this research project, and I hope afterwards that we will broaden the conversation, and I have a few little things that I'm going to make you do. That's not going to be my own for, but we will hopefully do a little shifting. There's totally no timepieces in this University. Okay, so mutually beneficial research. I think when I was looking at these again today, and last night, and I thought in the context of the discussion, you missed the song. Can I hear your song? Forgive for coming in late. Anyway, I think about it in an Indigenous context. You may not know what exactly I mean by that, but it's a cultural part of it. And that's really, I think, what I can bring. Because we're going to cover stuff I think you've probably heard, but I'm wanting to try to bring that cultural lens. And we'll talk about what that means, but you can just kind of have it in the back of your head as I go through this. So this is how the article that was published on specifically what we learned as researchers in this project, Poverty Action Research Project, PARP. So you can see how we brought in everyone that we could who had been part of the community that worked on, that was part of this whole project. So the people, you can see some of the academics, and you can see all 5 of our First Nations. And that, of course, was approved. They liked what we were saying, and they were happy to put the name on it. But I thought this project, which I haven't actually told you about yet, I'll tell you. Our principal investigator from University of Halifax, Dr. Fred Ween, got $2.5 million, I think, from CIHR, Canadian Institute for Health Research. I learned something yesterday, I think. And what we ended up having were a number of academics that were interested in the question that he had put forward. So no, we did not go to the communities first. This was national. We didn't know which ones were going to say they were interested. So we got the funding, and the idea was, let's look at health. Let's focus on health issues, and what the community wants around those health issues that could lead to economic development in the community. So as a result, we have had, I am not going to try to say Indian Brook's real name, but they were just changing it, and I learned it for like about 4 minutes, and then it was gone. So Indian Brook in Nova Scotia, Obituan, which was in Quebec, a remote community, Ibamatang, which again, fairly north in Ontario, Mississippilistic Creation, that was the one that I was involved with, which is 4.5 hours north of Winnipeg, and, okay, Tliltic, something, BC. Tliltic? I practiced, but I don't think we did a good job. So, I'm going to talk about the general research that occurred and sort of some of the lessons that we drew out of that research that can be perhaps shared to some benefit, but also wanted you to meet the community that I worked in. So this is Mississippilistic Creation. See that bridge? Grand Rapids is on the other side. So we've got a First Nations community, we've got a community, and then the third community in that triangle is Manitoba Hydro, and where all the Manitoba Hydro employees live. So it's an interesting dynamic, and many schools. I don't know that. Okay, we're in a school. Yeah. Okay. So they have some schools on this in MCN, but I know there's also some schools across the bridge as well. So it's an interesting dynamic when you have a community like that. Some good, some bad. So they have been around there. Evidence, physical evidence, 4,500 years. First contact in 1739. And they got a commercial fishery happening. But that kind of declined when, with the railway. And so fish companies moved south. And so they kind of went back to their traditional fishing and hunting lifestyle. This was hugely impacted by the dam that was built, like right around the corner. I went there once, and it's, the water used to run around the community, and that was the rapids. That's why it's called Grand Rapids. It's totally bare now. Like, it's just big rocks and nets because of the hydroactivity. And there's a lot of sadness and a lot of frustration by the loss that people can still remember. You know, there are people that still remember what life was like before that happened. So there's that, but then they also are a resilient community who have a good relationship with Manitoba Hydro on certain things. And so some of the work that we did, we had specifically a person from Manitoba Hydro on the advisory committee that the community had suggested. And he did stuff where he stretched rules so that it could be done for the community. So it's always never straight black and white, I think, with people when we're involved. I also put this slide in. Just some earnings in 2005, 33,920 full-time and 19,520. And the comment from the community was, you know, it was high for the part-time work because of the fishery. The fishery really helped raise the earnings there. Okay, so this project, as I said, across the country, highly rewarding for all of us as academics. Those of us who had not worked with communities to that extent, it was a really steep learning curve. And I think we've talked realities and pragmatism quite a bit, as well as theory, etc. Hi there.
Hi, is this weird? Sorry, I can leave.
No, it's not weird. I didn't know if you wanted something. Okay, so this is the result, the culmination of our research. And these were the 5 areas that we thought were worthwhile sharing. And I think when I was thinking about this part of it, it was like the new person, the person that really wants to do this kind of work in Indigenous communities, but really has no experience. So, but there was 10 of us, so it wasn't only my voice, but we were putting this together. So, I love PowerPoint, but y'all can read, right? Good, because I'm not going to be reading to you. So, everybody read that? You're good? We're going to go through each of them with examples. So this is like a summary slide. Sorry, but I just how we're going to get through this. Okay, so community-based participatory action, radically inverting, shifting the balance of power. And I think I did talk about that yesterday morning. Power shift between the Academy and our Indigenous research partners. That is for people who have not done this. It can trip you up unless you're surrounded by people that have a variety of experiences and can share some wisdom. Because I think sometimes, especially for students, we may think that we're going to solve all the problems, we're going to, you know, make a huge difference, and the community looks at you when you get in there and they go, you know, you've hit the wall and you don't know what it is, and you have good intentions. So we have talked heavily about the importance of community in setting things up. So as we started kind of backwards in a way, we did start saying we wanted to look at poverty And we did get the funding based on that. Then when we got the funding was when we worked with the community. How do you want to do this? That was just our reality and the experience that we had. So community really was very, very important for all of the group. And that last point about nations, not stakeholders, I think that really is the mindset that helps a person to go into a community. They don't know you. We knew one person in the community. I had a research partner, and we knew one person, and it sort of all started from that. It is a different experience, I think, when you know somebody. It does, help. And so that was our experience in the support stick, where we knew somebody, and so to engage as equal partners with important voices was really, really critical to the experiences that we had. The way that Fred ran it was that we had monthly telephone meetings with everybody from across the country talking about all the things that had happened for 6 years. So I mean, that was, I thought, quite useful because we would hear things and we'd have ideas and share ideas, give support where there was problems. This is not an easy walk. I hope that you understand that it's not an easy walk. So the foundational strengths of the communities were critical. We did start from the perspective of poverty, and that's not necessarily seen as a positive, it's more of a deficit. But understanding when you got into the community and found out how they supported you, and I mean how, what did it look like? What were they thinking that you might be able to help them with? That really then set you off to starting and building a really solid basis to move forward. And you saw how committed people were. I mean, our advisory committee, I would say there was a core. Our advisory committee, we probably had about six or seven people, of which 5, I think, did the full stint. Sundays was a day my research partner John and I could drive up and have a meeting with them, and they came out and contributed, and the chief and council were very supportive as well. We had I co-chaired it with a band counselor, so we always had those experiences and those perspectives at the table, and it was awesome. It was awesome what they did with us, for us, and as part of the project for their community. It was, always focused on their community. So, are you done? Anybody? Yes?
I just don't understand the 4th bullet. I don't understand what you mean by determination included these things.
Oh, that was alternatives that you could look at, that we had to look at. Because we had the, you know how it is, do you know how it is with a project? You have this idea in your head, and then you get the funds, and then you go, oops. It wasn't totally that, actually, when I get into community. So this was, these were things that, for example, our initial view, if I was to say, was much different at the beginning than at the end. So at the beginning, we were going up there, we were a resource. Oh, you need hockey sticks? We know where you can get hockey sticks. And we did that. And laptops. But then it became apparent, and we actually were not given any funding to take any action in the communities. So we're there, we've encouraged you to give you all your ideas, we've got you all worked up, we know we don't have any money for you. to help get you done, but we'll help you with research, we'll help that. That was sort of how it looked. And then as a result of, I may as well say it now, we had an unforeseen issue happen because we hired community coordinator. We hired community people before, I forget, to do a survey of needs. And I'm going to share some of those needs. But, so that was very positive. And then we hired a community coordinator from that group. And let's see, we probably worked together 2.5 years. And it just really deteriorated into an extremely toxic experience. And John and I were going, they're from the community. Ooh, what do we do here? And we just sat. And over time, after nothing happened, she quit. So we accepted the resignation, and then I said, you know, John, I think we can do this without a community coordinator. We can just like go do these things. We've already started. We've been doing 2.5 years. We should be fine. And so we did nothing for a year because we actually do need a community coordinator, but we saved money. So when we got the community coordinator, we said, we have $190,000 that we want to spend in your community on projects that you want us to do. Like it totally flipped. We actually had resources, totally unplanned, just totally not planned. But we had a means to make a difference, or begin to make a difference. So looking at those things, resiliency, creativity, well, I don't know how creative we were in that situation, but it can help when you're up against the wall. So, okay, so for this one, this is a picture from Miss Poistic, and this is a bit of a summary of how they see themselves. So we're going into the community, and we've got the survey, and this is how they see themselves. Strengths, our culture and our values. People pull together in a crisis and support each other. We are resilient. Community leaders, are elected or not, we have strong leaders, role models, and women who are strong leaders. Education. There are more people getting educated and returning to the community. That's always a huge issue, right? And so, and having University College of the North, they have a regional center at Mississippi, is a big benefit. So you're not traveling further north for your education to have something in the community. Our location, they're very proud of their territory. They want to be a hub for services in the north. And then I guess there was kind of a draw between we're strong in communication and we have a good young population. So those are the voices of the community speak. Then they talked about challenges. Here's one of the shots. Is that an eagle? Yeah. Yes. There you go. Okay. Alcohol and drugs. Strong issue with that. When we had a number of we had a number of conferences that brought 1 or 2 community people and an academic together from each of the 5 communities. And the last one, we had an elder from this community, and she said they just determined that one of the teachers was selling, and she hadn't been fired. She said, when I get home, I shall be on my lounge chair with my sign. So until she goes. And the other person that was from the community was on the council. So by the time we left, she said, that teacher's gone. Because that little granny was gonna be there. And like that's what I thought was really awesome about that community. It was all ages that love it and really want it to do well and not to have those kinds of issues there. Providing opportunities for youth and support for families was a challenge. So as a result, when the advisory committee met and we talked about priorities, what can we do? We've got this amount of time. And at that point we said, we have no money. What can we do? And they said, we want to focus all of our efforts on youth, because we want our youth to be healthy. We're going to get the young mothers in that group. That was also for families, parenting programs, etc. We want, that's what our focus is going to be out of all of these challenges. So education, they're still concerned about the quality of education at the school and that kids are not being prepared for higher learning. Negative attitudes, lack of work ethic. When we went into the Adult Learning Center, they said we have a lot of opportunities of companies wanting skilled labor. We bring that training into our center, and people have issues, especially if they deal on social welfare, with no sort of structure of getting in on time, of actually coming to class. So they have things offered in the community that aren't being utilized, so that was difficult. And infrastructure needs, access to land, capital for entrepreneurs, they said. They have a few businesses, but not that many. So another of the things that we wanted to share as a result of what we had experienced in this project, different worlds. And, you know, the idea of, yes, we will have to work together, but we have to work things out too. But there are issues that you're going to have to work out. But acknowledging that differences can be positive is really important. Just because we're different doesn't mean that we can't work together and we have to stop the conversation. But actually, in fact, it can be a strength. CIHR guidelines support that kind of research. And the problem of context, difficult sometimes to honor the spirit and intent of CIHR guidelines, given how councils and universities, including ethics arrangements, work. So the bureaucracy around this can create problems when, you know, you don't want it to, but that's the fact of life. Structures and processes are often deeply colonial. And so if you've got a university that's not been progressive around Indigenous research, it can be problematic. That said, in a bureaucracy, when you find people who want you to succeed and will do anything to help you succeed, like you want to put, you know, a crown on their head. That's rare, but it is possible. So when we had this $190,000, how do we get it from the university into the community? And the budget people bent over backwards. I went up and down at various levels. Not that I was selling, it was just to keep track of what they were determining was going to happen. And in the end, it was smooth. It could have been really rough. And that's, I think, that shows, you know, that there is hope. And you know, some of the things that we've talked about have been pretty deep and focused on, you know, the tough challenges. But I think the reason why we stay at it is that there is hope that things are changing, and you do see some change. And so I hope that you'll get that idea from my presentation as well. Progressive researchers navigating and understanding that they have to bridge. Yeah, nothing else to say on that. Okay. So, different worlds, different languages. So, in some of the committee meetings, in some of the communities, we had to translate into their particular languages. Some spoke no English. I know the Quebec one didn't. So that's just part of the process. In Mississippi, that was not an issue. The big issue was poverty. We don't like that word. That lasted about was after the first meeting. Came back and I said, oh, we renamed it. So pretty much all the communities did that. So Indian Brook, first one, changed the name of our work to building our community together. Openhearted. Do you know how long that took me to practice? A long time. Openhearted, lifting ourselves up. That was Mississippi Nation's view of what that meant to them, poverty, and what the project was about. So improving community well-being and cultural poverty, I guess, for Wuttunee, which was in Quebec. That was appropriate for their situation. So knowing that you do not have all the language, that's actually going to make a difference for people. Different pace. We would try to do, both John and I really were attuned to the whole process. We did not start the process with any misgivings at all, till you get in it. You're going, how come we're not doing anything? Like, have we done anything? And it's like type A personalities trying to get stuff done, and community stuff takes time. And so we learned. We went in there with a positive frame of mind, and we learned what it meant about this pace. And of course, building trust obviously takes time. And so the protocols differed. And so you had to be ready to acknowledge that there were differences in our communities, and that your community, for example, when we went to, every community had a different story. Every research experience was different. But when we decided we wanted, how do we get that community together? So we did have some big community meetings. We explained what we were doing. The meeting that we were advised by two band counselors to do it was to come and be part of the agenda for a meeting they were having about the land down by the river, and people were camping. So we went over there, we talked about it, and the people that were in the circle said, who wants to do this? Who wants to be on the advisory? So we got our advisory that way. And that made sense because we didn't say what meetings are happening, and so we'll chat with who's ever there. They told us how to get those people, and most of those ones were the ones at core that I said that stayed with us through the whole process. Getting to know each other, yeah. I'll have to say about that community coordinator that didn't work out. We did hire a second community coordinator that just about shone in goodness. It was awesome that we got her. But I think we had to wait all that time because she actually wasn't in the community when we were hiring. So it worked out awesomely. And I mean, it just didn't work out with the first community coordinator. But John and I both felt kind of stuck, like we just didn't really know how to do this when we couldn't work together. And so flexibility, adaptability, and patience. And understanding that maybe things aren't going to work out the way that you want, even though you have the best of intentions. You've done your due diligence, you've done the interview process, and 1 year later, it's a different person that you're dealing with. And so having a way to negotiate those kind of potential things, I think is important that you hear from the experience of others. So I would say that. So different political, academic, and social pressures. First Nations governments in little communities are swamped with things like we had more suicides this week. We have a job opportunity, but the young people that can fill it aren't ready, or we need to do more work there. So in absolutely every aspect of life, they are bearing that probably 24/7. And then there's your project on top of that. So we have to, I mean, that understanding comes from reality and understanding what their reality is. Two, even though they want to do it, may not mean that they have, you know, it may mean you're interrupting their golf game. I did that once. I called the counselor and he says, I'm in the middle of a golf game, I'll call you back. I'm still waiting. But, you know, and I can't criticize that because you need to de-stress and be good for your job. So there you go. Wuttunee was under third-party management, so another tight challenge. Just tight financial resources, not only in the communities, but sometimes in your project. I said, like, it was $2.5 million. Like, that sounds like perfectly funded, but no, it's not. So, and your communities with as leadership changes. We actually had the same chief through our whole project. The other communities had tough times when there was a change. Then you got to start from ground zero, trust and everything else. You got to do that. There's no shortcuts. So then it's our pressures as academics with teaching and everything else, and the community may understand or may not understand sort of what it is that we as academics have to deal with as well. And the idea, we've talked a lot, we've heard a lot about giving credit to the community, making sure that they're part of it. We did that with 3 articles, 2 articles and a summary of a project. It went to the, in our case, it went to the advisory committee and to the chief and council. So that was important to us and critical to be considered. Different pressures, again, the researchers' accountability to the First Nation. I think we've talked about that. I've heard that discussion. Might have been at lunch, and if you weren't at my lunch table, maybe you didn't hear. But I think we have talked about how important accountability is to the First Nation. But my point too is that there's also accountability to the First Nation community to you as a researcher, that you're able to say no if it's beyond your capacity, and that's not a negative. OCAP is something I think people are familiar with. And do no harm and act for the good with one's academic freedom also, in balance. I like the last one, research is ceremony. So ceremony is a lot of things. What we just did, the opening was a ceremony for starting. So y'all can learn my song or your song and start off your relationship if you're so inclined. Capacity issues. This came, I think, from a lot of the work that was being done in Abamatong. Abamatong is a community that was close to the Ring of Fire, and they were getting all ready. And so there was a lot of pressure for capacity building. We did not do any capacity building in our project that direct way. We did capacity working in other ways, and I will talk about that. But sort of not the academic, but academic's wife. She was hired and to do a lot of employment, counseling, and training in the band office, so that they could be ready for the deluge of companies and everything else that were wanting to work, which didn't come because of the price of the minerals went down. But they were ready. So this was at the time of our project, so that was why it was so big. So Vomiton is a flying community, and so yeah, lots of expenses, issues, and things like, oh, here, okay, so the last part was what that was summarized from the survey for Ms. Poistic. How do you think you want to strengthen your economy and reduce poverty? So this is what they said. Education is again emphasized. People talked about training for jobs in the community, improved learning, as well as lifelong learning. Second one, change in attitude. Overcoming the mindset that holds us back, keeps our people dependent, and makes it difficult to operate a business. So if you think you're coming into your community with insights that they've never heard, so I wanted to share what the community was saying already. They know what is the problem, and they know what they want to deal with it. They want to do to deal with it. Treatment and supports for families, for alcohol, drugs, parenting, and support networks, creating opportunities for youth and recreation, sports, and culture, having community vision and the leadership to help us achieve it, and figuring out how to work together. So IT issues, another big problem for remote communities. So if you said, I'm going to go and live in the community for 3 months for my research project, and you can't access, download, open emails, programs like Dropbox, transfers to larger files, downloading monthly bank statements, loading the web pages, exploring websites for resources and information because you're too far north. That's how those communities live. So then as researchers, John and I did not live in this Wuttunee. We needed, they actually usually had pretty good email facilities. Didn't really have too much trouble. The trouble that we had was they had problems with their waste management when it rained. So everything flooded. So the whole community was flooded. And so when we were there for a big celebration, there was a question of whether or not anybody would be there, because a lot of times they just head out to family that's out of the community. So that kind of thing happened. But here, talking about IT, yeah, get disconnected, and you have to, that's the whole time thing. When you've got a deadline and this is your reality, how do you make those things work? So, yes, troubleshooting, you may or may not have it, but the access to people that can help. And in remote communities, the project's efficiency does get impacted. So I said that we funded projects, and the projects were over 2 years. This is the first year. And so what we did was the community coordinator developed a form. And so if you had an idea for something that you think that you would like to offer to the community by way of a class, you filled it out, gave a little brief financial idea of how much it would cost. And everybody in our advisory committee, as you can expect, in small communities, knew everybody that was applying. And all of the applications went to the advisory committee for, because John and I didn't know anybody. I mean, well, we knew 7 or 8 people, but we didn't know what was needed, and so the advisory committee completely took this. I just managed the budget, the overall budget. So you can see there was a variety of types of things focused for the family. So all of these were submitted as proposals, one page, and the advisory committee did it. And then they also looked at, the one that just blew me away because I never even thought about it was driver's licenses. Because they're a ways away from the two somewhat larger communities. So they could have job opportunities that required a license but not a vehicle. So people actually needed that for employment opportunities. So we ran that for both years. It was fully utilized. Community cleanup, important household recycling, how do you do that with natural hydro? So we worked that out. And the lake keepers said people are throwing things off their boats into the water, garbage. And so we want to train our young people about the water. So they did teachings. They had an elder there to do teachings. And then they went and cleaned up as best they could, because it's actually a very huge job, some of the nets that were on the rocks. But as soon as we had any of these activities, we just went around the whole community, and people were really happy that we were doing it. Okay, summarizing. So, taking time to develop and keep trust relationships, long-term sustainability and efficacy. What did we do with these little projects that I just showed you? At the end of the second year, we surveyed with the help of the community coordinator as to which projects had a home. So that they had, in the second year, a chicken coop. Like, I thought that was just awesome. They were getting elders and chickens. But where were they going? And I was advised by the community coordinator that departments of the band had or the school had been into the greenhouses, and so they took control of those projects. So every one of the projects that were going in the second year, they said the community had taken a little responsibility for it. So does that mean that they were financed? Not sure. But there was somebody that was a champion at least for this project. So we have another presentation coming up. We finished this project last year. We still have another presentation coming up, and we will hear a little bit more where these projects are at. Importance of taking time, respectful, clear communication, totally important. So this is the responsibility or respect, commitment, mutual benefit, and relevance. Very much in keeping with what we've been talking about at this gathering. Integrating health, mind, body, and spirit, social, educational, environmental, that holistic view. And that's what we tried to do in this project. Open mind and open heart, and staying true to the spirit. Yeah, John and I think we had the conversation about how come we're not moving faster? One time in the 7 years, then we're like, okay, that's why. Sometimes you have to ask those questions that are on your mind and kind of, like bugging you, and it's maybe not exactly open-minded and open-hearted. And then you get back to that place. And so having a partner in your research that can help you get back to that place, I highly recommend it. It's very good. Acting for the good and mutual beneficial research. Thanks to the 5 First Nations that welcomed us into their territories, worked with us, allowed us to share, and gave their insights. Very engaging and incredibly important work, I have to say. So that was only 20 slides. We still have some time. I'm going to do something with you? Gee, that sounds like you already. I'm gonna do something with you and didn't think about it. Any comments or questions? You're all in awe. I've heard this before. I wanted you to look at it with the Indigenous lens, right? So, yes.
Did any of the communities have their own ethics protocols?
I was probably reported on in one of those meetings. MCN did not. Trying to think if anybody had their own ethics protocol. I don't recall that that was raised. Oh,
Like
yes,
monkey
Fred,
ethics
they did,
watch. Yes.
totally. Fred,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely, Indian Brook, yes. But it wasn't like part of what we were doing, but yes, each of us had to deal with our communities on the basis that they were at. And so, yes, Fred, for sure. In Indian Brook, he had to pass through that ethics review. And we had, in this one, oh my, no, in this one, we had to do our own ethics review with our own universities. We didn't have one that was a general one that we could. I've been in another project where that worked, for sure, and they did allow it. They rubber stamped it. Pretty cool for ethics.
How did you go about the second hiring process differently than the first one with your community support?
We picked a different person. It was totally the person. We did the same thing. We did, I don't know. I think, when I think about how the, you know, like if you're a bystander and somebody starts beating on you and they have like no reason, you go, how does that work? But they're coming from a place, although there's a lot of education, where I think things were unresolved. So, and it came out after. But looking at them, they looked fine, and they were fine. Like I said, it didn't come out till after, and then it was like, where did that come from? Like left field. Like it was just not, it was totally out of character. But, so that's why I think it wasn't about us. I think it was about us. Sort of that, I don't know. And I'm Cree, so I mean, it wasn't a race thing. It was, I don't know. It was, I think, a lot of pain and suffering that had, and John and I are just people. We're educated in a particular branch, but not, you know, the social side of things to be able to help a person through that. So I'm pretty sure that's what it was, because it was just an about face. So the other person that came along was just sweet and nice and did everything and stayed late and, you know, all the things you would hope for in a somebody that you're working with. She was awesomely efficient and just totally night and day. But the other person still does work around in the community, so there's goodness that way, you know? So she was free to do that. We freed up her time. Nothing else? Yes. Oh, look at that, 3 in a row. Okay.
I just wondered if you had any suggestions or what worked around the issues of vacancies, turnover, and continuity.
That was within the communities, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
like it would
Yeah.
be more at the advisory level, I guess, or maybe, I don't know.
In the advisory level, you're right, because we had that gap. People thought we quit. And we were in the midst of dealing with a personnel issue that we couldn't talk about, so everything just kind of shut down. And so there could have been people that left because of that. There was turnover, but there was always somebody else that came in to fill. So there was never, you know, it never went down to like 2 or 3 people. There was always people that came. So in terms of the advisory, you have to expect turnover because life happens. And I mean, we had people the school principal, 2 Fishers, husband and wife. We had, you know, people from across the whole community. And yeah, so you just have to be prepared. And because we really relied on our community coordinator to help us, like who else can we get? Who else would be good here? So that role was extremely important.
You take your concepts and put them in little chunks, put them all together.
How do you mean, our concepts?
Well, whatever you were trying to work to,
Do them in little chunks, break them
yeah.
up? I think we tried, we wanted it to work with the advisory committee, so we kept at it. We didn't feel like we had to move away from that, because people would come to the meetings on a Sunday afternoon, and they could have been home with their families. So there was a lot of dedication. We didn't want to be disrespectful. So, yeah. And nobody, they never said, we have to do this a different way. This is not what we never did that. Yes,
Thank you for your presentation.
you're very welcome.
You mentioned that you did a survey in the communities.
Yes.
I just wonder, like, could you just elaborate more about the survey? How did you develop the questionnaire and how did you do it in the community? And how did this results?
Okay, you're asking me for something from 7 years ago. I think I remember what I had for dinner, if you really want me. I can do generally, I can't do super specifically about that survey. I am not a fan of surveys. I do not think that surveys are the way to go in Indigenous communities and in many communities, but they have their uses, and I know researchers use them. This is not something that I'm super comfortable with, but we were asked to do a survey of our community, and I do not know that all the other communities did it. We did it. We did it for sure. And we were asked to sort of get a benchmark picture of where they were at there. And so some of it was, you know, just demographic material, but then we also asked like about the strengths and the weaknesses of the community, the challenges, and what do you think needs to be done. So off the hop, we had that. And now how the questions were developed. It just so happened the person that we asked to do the survey was a consultant from the community, and she did all the questions. We reviewed and vetted them, but she was excellent. She really did a great job. Then she personally went around in the and to the homes and had her sisters, who are also obviously from the community, do it as well. Because in a small community, very, very difficult for me to walk in there and say, so, how much money do you make? Or whatever questions we have. I have them all. I have all of the surveys that were completed still. We'll give them back to the community if they would like that. But yeah, so the survey worked because we had people from the community that knew everybody and knew where they lived and could track them down if they weren't at home, and they did. And we had set a target for the community for the sample size, and they met it. Can't tell you what that number was, but I know they worked. They had a number that they were to hit. I don't think we had a size of the community